Hello, sorry about that. I got cut off on that last video. I was pretty much done with number 8 anyway. So this is number 9. Please, again, try these on your own, pause the video, and then unpause it if you'd like my explanation on how each problem is done. So for number 9, the x-intercepts, before we begin, though, I always like to talk about the degree. So you have an x here, and then you actually have two x's over here. So you have a total of 3 x's. This is going to be a degree of 3, so it's going to be an S shape, and my x's are positive, so it's going to be a positive S shape. It's going to start down at the bottom, and then it's going to move its way towards the top. So it's going to look, I don't know, something like this. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's an S shape, and it's going to end up pointing up. So that's what a positive S shape looks like. All right, let's talk about the x-intercepts. So the x-intercept here is going to be positive 2, and the x-intercept here is going to be negative 1. Just switch the sign. Now the negative 1 has a multiplicity of 2. It repeats itself twice. That means it's going to bounce off at negative 1. It's not going to go through. Okay. So again, I just wanted to show you that there is 3 x's, because if we write 2 of these, you can now see the 3 x's. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 x's. Let's go ahead and graph this. So for my first dot, I have a dot at the positive 2. It's going to go through at this point. It's going to go up like this because it's a positive S shape. It's going to end up going up. And then my other x-intercept was negative 1, but it's going to bounce off here because it has a multiplicity of 2. So we're starting from the bottom. We're probably going to bounce off of here. We're going to dip down somewhere, and then we're going to go through the 2, and we're going to go up. Now let's talk about that y-intercept. So let's make x equals 0, and my y-intercept is going to be multiplying what's left. Okay, so you're going to multiply this negative 2 times this positive 1, but there's 2 of them, so there's another positive 1. And negative 2 times 1 is just negative 2. So the y-intercept is negative 2. So we could go ahead and graph that dot also. So right here, we're going to have a y-intercept of negative 2. So now we know that the graph is going to start from the bottom. It's going to come up. It's going to bounce off at the negative 1. It's going to go through this y-intercept, then it's going to come back up and go through the 2 and come up. Now again, how far low you go here doesn't really matter. That's not what I'm grading for. Okay, so let's look at this thing. Here it is. Bounced off at the 1, went through the 2. It doesn't matter how low you go. You don't have to go this low. And then you go through the 2. All right, let's talk about the end behavior. What happens to the graph as you look to the left? It's going down. What happens as you look to the right? It's going up. These are your answers. Let's move on to number 10. All right, so for number 10, you're given a polynomial, and you're asked just these 3 questions. We're not going to graph it. We have to just answer what we have here. How many x-intercepts does this graph have? How many actual answers do you have? Well, x equals positive 2 here. That's 1 x-intercept. And then here it's switched around, but we know it's the same answer. X equals positive 2. So you have 2 answers, but it's really 1 x-intercept, which is positive 2. So how many x-intercepts does this graph have? I'm sorry, I put 2 as the answer. I'm going to go ahead and pause this video and change that because the answer is really 1. Let's see. Sorry about that. Okay, so, oops, okay, so how many x-intercepts does this graph has? It has 2 answers, but it's the same answer, so it's really 1 x-intercept. Sorry about that. What happens to the value of the function as x approaches negative infinity? So as you look to the left, what's happening to the graph? Well, you don't have a graph. We haven't graphed it. But the good thing is you don't have to graph it. Just think about it. What kind of shape is this? There's two x's. One of them is negative and one of them is positive. So that's going to be a U shape because it's even. The degree is 2, but it's a negative. So my graph is going to be downwards U shape. So then what's the end behavior? It's going to approach negative infinity no matter where you look. You can look to the left, it's going to be going down. You can look to the right, it's still going to be going down. So the end behavior is that it approaches negative infinity. Okay, so that's the answer to this. All right, the next number, number 11. How many x-intercepts does this function have? Well, it has 3 because right here the x-intercept is 0, x equals 0. Here it's negative 7, and here it's positive 9. So that means it has 3 x-intercepts. Now, what is the picture of this going to look like? All of my x's are positive, positive, positive. So this is a positive x cubed polynomial. So it's a power of 3. It's an S shape. It's a positive S shape. So what does that look like? It looks something like this. It starts on the low side, and then it has this like movement in the middle, and then it's going to point up. So this is enough of a visual for me. I don't have to draw a real graph, and I don't have to get fancy with it. I just need to remember that it's a positive S shape. What's happening as I look to the left? It's going down. What's happening when I look to the right? It's going up. And that's my answer for number 11. Moving on to number 12. So for this one, they want to know the zeros. That's like asking me what's the x-intercepts. We've been doing that. So right here, the x-intercept is positive 3. And right here, the x-intercept is negative 1. It's a multiplicity of 2, so I could write it again, x equals negative 1 and negative 1, but you don't have to do that. It's a repeated answer. So the x-intercepts are 3 and negative 1 with a multiplicity of 2. Then they want you to create a graph for this function. So you need to create a picture where your x goes through at the 3 and it bounces off at the negative 1. It's an S shape because you have 3 x's. You have 2 over here and 1 more over here. So that's 3. It's an S shape. It's going to start low and then it's going to go up. Your picture needs to look something like this, okay? Your y-intercept is 3. Let's talk about y. It's because you multiply this, negative 3 times 1 times 1. So you could put zeros on the x's so that you can look at that, okay? Again, how far down you go here does not matter. You could have gone like this and then through, and that would have been just fine. Okay, what I'm looking at is, did you put a dot at the negative 1? Did you bounce off at the negative 1? And then did you go through at the 3? Okay, and if you got the y-intercept, that's great, but it's not like a major thing that I'm looking for right now. The main thing is these two x-intercepts. All right, number 13. Identify the zeros. So this is positive 4 and this is negative 2. Again, with a multiplicity of 2, so it's going to bounce off. For the graph, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the y-intercept because I didn't really do that on the last problem. So we have a 0 here. So then you're going to be left with negative 4. And then on the other parentheses, we're also going to put a 0 on the x again. And then you have a positive 2. So we're multiplying with the positive 2. But this power tells us we have 2 of those. So another 2. What's negative 4 times 2 times 2? That's going to be negative 16. So our y-intercept is negative 16. Okay. That is a pretty big number. for our y-intercept. It's pretty big, 16, having to go all the way to 16. It's going to be challenging. But this is your y-intercept. I'm just abbreviating y-intercept. Okay, let's see. So what I did was I'm just going to graph something. I didn't go all the way to 16. I just went to 4 because I didn't want to have to graph all the way to 16. So again, what I'm focusing on for this is just the x-intercepts. I didn't really focus on the y, but the graph would look similar to this. It's not the exact graph. What I'm looking for is, did you bounce off at the -2 and did you go through on the 4? So this is an S shape, and it looks like this. It starts low, bounces off, and then goes through on the 4. It's S shape because you have 3 x's. You have 2 right here, and then 1 more. So that's 3 x's. All right, we're almost done. Number 14. Identify the zeros of this function. So the answer here is going to be +5 with a multiplicity of 3. And the answer here is going to be +3 with a multiplicity of 2. So what does that mean? For the multiplicity of 3, it is going to go through, but it's going to have a flex. For this one, it has a multiplicity of 2, so it's just going to bounce off. Let's create the graph of this. Oh, by the way, how many x's are there? 3 plus 2 is 5. This is going to be an odd polynomial because it has a degree of 5, so it's going to be an S shape. The x's are positive, so it's going to be a positive S shape. It's going to start down here. It's going to work its way up. Let's see what it looks like. Here's a picture that looks similar to it. All right. So again, what I'm looking for is that it bounced off at the 3 because it had a multiplicity of 2. It didn't go through. It bounced off. And then it had a weird flex at the 5. It had a flex and it went through. So this is what the picture could look like. Okay. All right, moving on. This is the end of lesson 2, day 2, video 2. Please look over your notes, look over this worksheet and the worksheet from earlier today, and pass that quiz. Good luck. Thank you for watching.